2 summers ago, I went on the road trip of a lifetime. My best friend and I went to every single Major League Baseball stadium. But we didn't just visit every stadium. We threw out the first pitch 3 times, got to visit historic baseball sites, met some amazing people, and had an incredible time playing games, eating food, and living a life of luxury. At least that's what a lot of people took from our trip. As the summer went on, we started to get more and more negative comments from people on social media. We were criticized for spending a lot of money, had our vocation as Franciscans questioned, told that all we were doing was having fun while the rest of the world had to do real work. Which was absolutely not the case, but as I've thought about it, I can't fault people for coming to that conclusion. We really only showed them the fun things, the food, the games, the casual moments. We didn't show them the 20 or so talks we gave at parishes or the masses we celebrated every weekend. We didn't record the confessions we heard or the intimate conversations we had or heartfelt prayers we shared. Because how could we? The purpose of our trip, what inspired us to go 17,000 miles in 10 weeks, evangelization and reconciliation, isn't easily filmed. You can't record someone's confession. You can't walk up to someone and say, hey, can I talk to you about faith, something you've been struggling with and won't talk to anyone else about? Also, can I film it for the internet? The real meat of what we were doing, what made the trip worthwhile, just didn't lend itself to being shared, and so we didn't. At least that's what we thought while we were on the trip. But we could have done better. We could have shown just a little bit of what we did. Which is why last week when Tito and I were together again, going to a baseball game, we decided to take a bit of a risk. What if we just asked people if we could film our conversations? What if we could show people just a small snippet of what we did all summer? Like this guy, for instance, a regular practicing Catholic who found it interesting that friars were at a baseball game.
What do you think about God?
God's great.
God is great? What do you like about God?
He loves everything. He loves everyone. He loves me. He loves you.
Absolutely. If you could change one thing about the church, what would you change?
Let's see. All that standing up. You're standing up and kneeling.
Classic calisthenics.
Yeah, and then the shaking of the hands. Like, I don't know where where's your hand been? I don't know where that's been.
Okay.
I get it, whatever. Like, let's be friendly.
I shook his hand afterwards by
maybe a
mistake.
wave.
Light, fun, affirming. Here was a guy who went to Mass each week and loved church. We didn't have any major breakthroughs or deep revelations, but we talked a little bit about Pope Francis, the regular goings of church, and why we are at a baseball game in our habits. Conversations like these were plentiful throughout that whole summer, and we loved them. Just because they were already Catholic didn't mean we had nothing to offer them. We weren't out to convert them per se, but sometimes you just need to see your priest out in the real world, affirming what you're doing, showing that the church cares about you and cares about evangelization. In these conversations, we got a perspective of what it's like to be Catholic in different parts of the country, what issues people were facing, and how we could better serve them. A real practice of synodality. Admittedly though, what was much more interesting was talking to Christians like this guy who felt alienated by the church.
So what keeps you from going to church regularly?
Hypocrisy in church leadership, honestly.
I know that.
We don't always see people living the faith that they preach, and that bothers us a lot.
What would bring you back?
Knowing that I could trust that the people that are standing up there teaching us are practicing what they preach, and we know that they're not telling us one thing on Sunday and living another life on Wednesday.
Sure.
Here was a guy who just didn't feel safe in his own church. Although a Protestant, he echoed the same frustrations of many Catholics in recent decades about the lack of trust in leadership. How could he bring his kids to a place that had covered up sexual abuse? How can he trust a guy with his soul if he can't even trust him with his donation? These were always such difficult conversations because there's little you can say in the moment but affirm their experience. It's not a time to be defensive, not a time to change their minds. They're already coming from a place of woundedness. They don't need another priest invalidating their experience. What they need is an example of a priest who's actually on their side. While this guy was fairly reserved, no doubt because of the camera, why we didn't film in the first place, the reactions of others were all over the map. Some were visibly angry, some dismissive, some deeply pained. In these situations, it was important for us to remain calm and to remember that for many people, they were never given a chance to air their grievances with someone in the church. Some had been holding on to feelings for literal decades, and it wasn't always going to come out in the tidiest of ways. But as far as I'm concerned, rather it be me yelled at than someone who's going to be less patient. A point that was especially important when we met Catholics who just seemed lost and disconnected, like this guy.
So you say you used to be Catholic, but you're not Catholic anymore. What happened?
Common story.
When I was 5 years old, my parents got divorced, and the church ostracized my mother for it, so that's why I stepped away.
So sorry to hear that. So if you could talk to Pope Francis right now, what would you tell him?
I would love to meet him.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Would you give him any advice or requests or anything?
I don't think I could ever give advice. Are you kidding me?
What could you
Fair
say?
enough.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could change something about the church, what would you change?
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't thought about that.
No.
That's a really good question.
Okay, well then what would bring you back to the church? Is it something you need to see, something you need to feel, new hope?
No, actually, I pray to Jesus every morning. So
That's
my
wonderful.
faith isn't gone.
Beautiful.
I just don't necessarily believe I need to go to a house of God.
Okay, so that's wonderful. So you pray, you believe in Jesus, but there's something about the church that you're still not there yet. So stumbling block, is there something you say like, it's this reason I can't go back to church?
I don't think I need it.
Okay.
Here's a guy who loves Jesus, prays every morning, and looks to the Pope as a wisdom figure, but doesn't think he needs the church, who might not have received the Eucharist since he was a kid. How easy it would be to rush in with canon law. Don't you know that you're committing a mortal sin by missing Mass? Your conscience is in grave error if you think you don't need the church. Correct, I guess, but entirely unhelpful. Clearly, the perceived injustice of whatever happened to his mother still weighs on him. Right or wrong, there is a wound there. Without the camera on and with a little more time, Tito and I would slowly draw it out of someone like him, letting him talk and share about his experience. Maybe we'd ask some questions, try to help him get over the past and reconcile with the church, but it would be slow. The thing with all of these conversations is that they're short. They're one-time meetings. Even if it lasted 15 minutes, which they often would, we wouldn't get to the bottom of the issue, and our goal was never to fix the person all at once. Our hope was simply to get them to the next step, leave them more open for a next encounter. Give them something to think about. Being a positive witness, a gentle ear, a sign of goodness and life in the church was often all we could provide, but we had to believe that we were planting seeds, getting to speak to people who would otherwise never talk about God or the church that might grow someday. A point that was exemplified in this last conversation, one that did in fact go on for nearly 20 minutes and cover a host of topics.
What's your opinion of God?
Opinion? I would say that he's a higher power over humanity as a whole.
Okay.
I would say he doesn't exist.
Okay.
So notice the demeanor of this woman on the left. She came on very strong at first, was very antagonistic towards religion, and even asked some very inappropriate questions off camera, but she was the one who approached us. We didn't force her to talk with us. She came and started asking us questions. Keep that in mind as you watch.
Was there ever a time where you did think he existed?
No.
No. Okay.
Very close, but no.
Very close,
When
but no.
my mom was dying, I kind of thought, but no. Screw you, I'm bad.
Okay. So there was an anger towards God.
So we are immediately jumping into some stuff here. One, she never believed in God, but almost did. A lot to unpack there. And two, she's upset with God over the death of her mother. In case you forgot, we're having this conversation at a baseball game. She's not coming to the church for help. This is literally a woman at a bachelorette party, and we're delving into some ultimate questions.
What would you need for you to believe in God?
So I love asking questions like this. Rarely can people give a good, direct answer because they've never really thought about it. I think a lot of people want to believe or want to be sure about things like this, but they've never asked what would actually make them believe. They claim that there's a standard that isn't being met, but don't know what the standard is.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Make me feel better about me? I don't know. And I don't know if anybody can actually do that.
Maybe feel better about me. Interesting. With more time, I would ask her why she didn't feel better right now, what might have been weighing on her, what she hoped for. Not that I could provide it, but again, because I think that a lot of people have so many unresolved issues that go unresolved because they're never really examined.
So if God does exist, what would you ask him? You get to ask him one question. What would you ask God?
Can you bring my mom back?
Oof. You can see what's at the root here. You can see the wounds, the longing, the hole that needs to be filled. You might even see why there could be some resistance to God. How could God be all-powerful if I felt suffering, if I feel so alone or empty?
Oh, okay. And what if he said no?
I would not be very happy.
Okay.
And then we try to challenge a bit. Not too much. Clearly, this is a person in a vulnerable state, but you've got to challenge someone's notion of God, or at least set them up for real faith. Just because God doesn't answer every prayer, just because we experience some suffering, doesn't mean that our God is powerless or that he doesn't care. With a much longer conversation, we could have gotten into some of this, but again, we're planting seeds, we're piquing interest, we're hopefully challenging expectations and unsettling worldviews just enough that tomorrow is going to be a little different than today. With this person in particular, something was definitely stirred up. Watch how the conversation continues just before Tito turns off the camera.
Do you really bring the word of God to people? Is that, no, I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Is that what you say you do?
She's one part incredulous, one part fascinated. This does not match her conception of the church. Two young, normal-looking priests coming to her because they want to listen, going out into the world to help people, to love them. To be honest, the woman wouldn't leave us alone after this. She had question after question. She dragged us to meet her friends. She even shared a few things that we could pray for. The woman who doesn't believe in God, but almost did once, was willing to let us pray for her. That's why we were there. That's why we went to baseball stadiums all around the country. Because people like this woman, people like the dozens of other people we talked to off camera, are not coming to church and would otherwise never be reached. Sometimes you gotta do something a bit wild. Take a risk. Meet people where they actually are. We talk about that all the time, but in order to meet people where they are, we have to be willing to get out of the church and into their lives. Did it have to be baseball games? No, of course not. But as I talked about in this video, there's something to doing what you love in the world and using a beloved secular pastime to evangelize. As for the trip costing lots of money, that's really just an unfounded judgment. We stayed nearly every night at a friary or rectory, got comp tickets from all but 4 stadiums, which they do for a lot of people, and packed the car with groceries so we didn't have to buy much food on the road. We gave talks, missions, and retreats along the way, earning stipends and donations, and at the end of it all, basically came out breaking even. But even if it didn't, even if it cost tens of thousands of dollars, I would still think it's worth it. And I'd love to see more of it, even on a much smaller scale. Why can't any one of you do this? Sure, you don't have a habit, not as easily recognizable, but why can't people just talk about their faiths with strangers? Why can't secular environments be places of encounter and reconciliation? What I hope people take away from this trip is not that we had fun and lived our childhood dream, but that we gave a model for all Christians to really get out there and evangelize. If what we did was just a one-off trip, just some interesting social media content and newspaper articles, I'd say it really was a failure. Hopefully, whether you understood it 2 years ago or you're seeing it now, you can look at what we did and see it as an extension of what we do in our normal lives and what you can do as well. It's time to get out there, Christians, and play ball.